Imagine waking up one day and realizing that the very fabric of society is quietly unraveling before your eyes. Think of the way conversation seems shallower, how entertainment increasingly rewards noise over depth, and how people seem to know more about celebrities than about the forces shaping their own lives. Have you noticed how, despite living in an age of infinite information, true wisdom feels rarer than ever? Today, we are going to explore a disturbing and fascinating question. Why is society becoming more stupid every day? And most importantly, what can we do about it? Stay with me until the very end, because the last insight I will share is the most important one of all, and it has the power to completely transform how you understand the modern world. Before we dive deeper, make sure you subscribe to this channel, leave a like on this video, share it with someone you care about, and tell me in the comments what you think about the state of society today. Your voice matters, and by participating in this discussion, you become part of a community that is striving to awaken from the fog of mediocrity and reclaim the clarity of true thought. Now let us begin. To understand why society seems to be sinking into an abyss of superficiality, we must first confront an uncomfortable truth. The very tools that promise to elevate human knowledge, technology, social media, mass education, are often being used in ways that dull our minds instead of sharpening them. Think about the paradox. Humanity has at its fingertips the greatest library ever created, more knowledge than all previous generations combined. Yet studies show that attention spans are shrinking, critical thinking skills are declining, and people increasingly struggle to differentiate between truth and lies. It is as though in the rush to consume information, society has forgotten how to digest it. Philosophers and psychologists warned us long ago about this danger. The German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche spoke about the last man, a future individual who avoids depth, lives for comfort, and shuns anything that demands true thought. Does that not sound eerily familiar to our times, where convenience often triumphs over wisdom? Likewise, Neil Postman, in his seminal work, Amusing Ourselves to Death, foresaw a culture in which entertainment would become the lens through which all reality is filtered, reducing even the most serious matters into spectacles designed to capture attention for a few fleeting seconds. But why has this shift accelerated so dramatically in recent years? One reason lies in the way our brains respond to stimulation. The psychologist Daniel Kahneman, who studied the dual processes of thinking, explained that human beings prefer the path of least resistance. We lean toward quick, easy answers instead of slow, deliberate reasoning. The problem is that modern society is structured to exploit that weakness. Social media platforms, advertising, and even political discourse are designed to trigger emotional reactions rather than deep reflection. In this environment, stupidity is not merely accidental, it is manufactured. Think about the rise of viral trends, memes, and sound bites that dominate online conversations. They spread not because they are true, but because they are simple and emotionally charged. Compare that with the way ancient wisdom traditions functioned. In Plato's Academy, students spent years wrestling with difficult questions, debating, and refining their understanding. In contrast, today's public sphere often rewards those who shout the loudest, not those who think the deepest. Ask yourself, when was the last time you saw a trending video or news headline that actually challenged you to think critically about life, society, or morality? How often do you encounter content designed to slow you down and provoke reflection, compared with the endless flood of distractions meant to keep you scrolling? This is the modern tragedy, an abundance of information combined with a famine of wisdom. The consequences are profound. When people lose the ability to think deeply, they become more vulnerable to manipulation. Consider how misinformation spreads faster than truth online. Studies by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology have shown that false news travels significantly faster and farther on social media than verified facts. Why? Because falsehoods are often crafted to be sensational and emotionally appealing, whereas truth requires nuance, patience, and context. And in a society addicted to speed, nuance becomes the first casualty. It is not just a matter of personal ignorance, it is a collective decline. As public discourse deteriorates, entire communities risk losing their capacity for reasoned debate. Politics devolves into tribal shouting matches. Education focuses more on test performance than on cultivating wisdom. Entertainment glorifies outrage, scandal, and spectacle. In short, society begins to prefer the shallow over the profound, the immediate over the eternal. Yet within this bleak picture, there is also an opportunity. The recognition of decline can be the first step toward renewal. By understanding the forces that push society toward stupidity, we can begin to resist them. By reclaiming the practices of critical thought, reflection, and meaningful conversation, we can rise above the noise and rediscover the clarity that once guided human progress. But here's the challenge. This journey requires courage. It requires us to question what is popular, to resist the easy seduction of distraction, and to cultivate a mind capable of standing apart from the crowd. As the French philosopher René Descartes once said, "The greatest minds are capable of the greatest vices as well as of the greatest virtues." The same tools that are dumbing society down can also be used to elevate it, but only if we consciously choose to do so, and that choice begins with you. Think for a moment about how you consume information on a daily basis. Do you scroll endlessly through your phone, moving from one post to another without retaining much of what you saw? Do you rely on headlines, short clips, and quick takes to form your opinions about complex issues? If so, you are not alone. This is the default behavior that our society is being trained into, and it is one of the key reasons why intelligence is being replaced by distraction. The Canadian psychologist Steven Pinker has written extensively on how the human brain adapts to its environment. When we are constantly bombarded by short bursts of content, our minds adapt by craving brevity, even at the cost of depth. This means that complex reasoning, long-form reading, and patient learning become less natural to us. What was once a muscle strengthened by practice is now at risk of atrophy. The result is a population that can process enormous amounts of shallow information, but struggles to engage with anything requiring sustained attention. This shift is not only individual, but also cultural. Historically, societies valued the role of wisdom keepers, philosophers, teachers, elders, who devoted themselves to understanding the human condition and passing down insights. Today, these figures are often overshadowed by influencers whose primary goal is not truth, but engagement. The algorithm rewards popularity, not profundity, and so society increasingly confuses fame with wisdom, forgetting that one does not necessarily imply the other. Consider the way modern education systems operate. In many countries, schools have shifted towards standardized testing and rote memorization, leaving little room for critical thinking or creativity. The philosopher John Dewey once said, "Education is not preparation for life, education is life itself." Yet modern schooling often reduces learning to a series of checkboxes, training students not to think for themselves, but to perform on exams. This has serious consequences for how entire generations approach problem solving and independent thought. When people are conditioned to look for quick answers, they become less tolerant of ambiguity. Yet ambiguity is the birthplace of wisdom. The psychologist Carl Jung emphasized that true growth comes from confronting the contradictions within ourselves, embracing the shadow, and navigating the tension between opposites. But in a culture addicted to simplicity, there is little patience for such depth. We prefer certainty, even if it is false, to complexity that demands effort. This addiction to certainty has been weaponized. Politicians, advertisers, and media corporations all understand that the average person is more likely to be swayed by confident, simple statements than by careful, nuanced arguments. And so society is flooded with slogans instead of ideas, with sound bites instead of philosophies. The result is not just a dumbing down of discourse, but an erosion of democracy itself. Because a population that cannot think critically is easily manipulated. Let us reflect on this. How many times have you seen people argue passionately online about topics they clearly do not understand? How often do we see comments filled with anger and certainty, but lacking evidence or reflection? This is what happens when society rewards confidence more than competence. The illusion of knowledge, as Stephen Hawking warned, becomes more dangerous than ignorance itself. But perhaps the most alarming aspect of this decline is the loss of memory. In the past, cultures preserved their wisdom through stories, traditions, and texts that span centuries. Today, digital media floods us with new content every second, but much of it vanishes just as quickly. What was trending yesterday is forgotten tomorrow. The Spanish philosopher George Santayana once wrote, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. In a society addicted to the new, the past becomes irrelevant, and lessons that could guide us are lost in the noise of constant novelty. Yet amidst this crisis, we must not lose sight of possibility. If stupidity is spreading through habits of distraction and superficiality, then intelligence can be cultivated through habits of reflection and depth. We can choose to consume content that challenges us rather than numbs us. We can practice the art of slow reading, of deep listening, of meaningful dialogue. These are not merely personal choices. They are acts of resistance against a culture that profits from our passivity. One simple but powerful practice is to reclaim silence. The Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard warned that busyness and noise prevent us from truly knowing ourselves. In today's world, silence is almost revolutionary. In the quiet, we can reflect, analyze, and reconnect with our deeper selves. By embracing moments of stillness, we resist the constant pressure to react, and we rediscover the capacity to think. Another practice is to question relentlessly. Socrates, the father of Western philosophy, built his entire method on asking questions rather than offering answers. Imagine what would happen if society returned to this mindset. If instead of rushing to judgment, we pause to ask, why do I believe this? Who benefits from me believing it? What evidence supports it? Such questions cut through the fog of misinformation and force us to engage with reality more authentically. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Thinking for yourself is not easy. It is often lonely because it requires stepping away from the crowd. It can be painful because it forces you to confront the illusions you once clung to. Yet it is precisely this difficulty that makes it so valuable. As the German philosopher Immanuel Kant declared, "Dare to know. Have the courage to use your own reason." This is the essence of enlightenment, and it remains just as urgent today as in Kant's time. Now pause and ask yourself, are you living in a way that strengthens your mind or in a way that weakens it? Do you feed your intellect with wisdom and reflection, or do you allow yourself to be carried by the current of distraction? Your answer to this question determines whether you are part of the problem or part of the solution. And this brings us to a deeper revelation, one that may unsettle you, but is crucial to understand. Society's stupidity is not simply accidental or inevitable, it serves a purpose. For when people are distracted, unthinking, and divided, they are easier to control. The decline of wisdom is not just a cultural trend, it is also a tool of power. If the decline of intelligence is not only accidental, but also convenient to those in power, then we must ask who benefits from a society that is distracted, misinformed, and intellectually weakened. The answer, though uncomfortable, is clear. Political leaders, corporations, and media conglomerates all have something to gain from a population that does not think deeply. A society addicted to entertainment and noise is less likely to question authority, less likely to challenge injustice, and less likely to demand change. Think about it. When people spend hours every day immersed in trivial distractions, their energy for serious reflection diminishes. When debates are reduced to shouting matches, real dialogue vanishes. When citizens are more invested in the lives of celebrities than in their own civic responsibilities, democracy itself begins to wither. The Roman poet Juvenal described this long ago with the phrase bread and circuses. Leaders kept the population pacified by giving them food and entertainment, distracting them from corruption and decay. Does this not sound strikingly similar to the world we inhabit today, where endless streams of content keep us docile while deeper crises unfold in the background? The French philosopher Michel Foucault argued that power often operates not through force, but through subtle systems of control that shape how people think and behave. In our time, one of the most effective systems of control is the manipulation of attention. Social media platforms, for example, are engineered to capture and hold your focus. Every notification, every like, every endless scroll is designed to hijack your brain's reward system. And the more distracted we become, the less capable we are of critical thought. But let us go even further. This decline of intelligence is not only about distraction, it is also about division. When people are divided against one another, they cannot unite against the forces that exploit them. And what better way to divide a society than to encourage shallow thinking and emotional reactions? Misinformation thrives in this environment. Outrage spreads faster than understanding. Simplistic labels replace nuanced analysis. People cling to tribal identities instead of engaging in reasoned debate. The American historian Christopher Lasch observed that modern culture often promotes narcissism, a fixation on the self, on appearances, on instant gratification. In such a culture, collective intelligence weakens because people are too absorbed in personal vanity to engage with the larger challenges facing humanity. When society becomes narcissistic, the pursuit of truth gives way to the pursuit of validation. And validation is easy to obtain in a world of likes, shares, and followers. Ask yourself, how often do you see public figures rewarded not for being wise, but for being loud? How often do influencers gain millions of followers by exaggerating, provoking, or sensationalizing, rather than by offering thoughtful insights? This is not just a cultural curiosity, it is a symptom of a system that values attention above truth. And when attention becomes the currency of power, stupidity becomes profitable. This is why philosopher Noam Chomsky once remarked that propaganda is to a democracy what violence is to a dictatorship. If you can control what people pay attention to, you can control how they think, what they desire, and what they fear. And the easiest way to control attention is to reduce complex realities into simplistic narratives that appeal to emotion rather than reason. But let us not mistake this for a purely external problem. It is also internal. Every time we choose distraction over depth, every time we prefer certainty over complexity, we are complicit in this decline. The truth is, society becomes stupid not only because of corrupt leaders or manipulative corporations, but because individuals surrender their capacity for thought. Yet here lies a powerful truth. The very forces that weaken society also reveal the path to its renewal. If stupidity spreads through distraction, then intelligence can be reclaimed through focus. If manipulation thrives on division, then wisdom can be rebuilt through unity. If superficiality dominates culture, then depth can once again become revolutionary. But this requires courage, the courage to resist the easy path. Think about the words of Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor who wrote in Man's Search for Meaning that between stimulus and response there is a space. Response lies a space, and in that space lies our power to choose. In a society designed to provoke instant reactions, the act of pausing, reflecting, and choosing thoughtfully is an act of defiance. It is also an act of freedom. So how do we begin to resist the tide of stupidity that threatens to engulf us? The first step is awareness. You must recognize the ways in which your own attention is being manipulated. Ask yourself, why am I consuming this piece of information? Does it enlighten me or merely distract me? Who benefits from me believing this narrative? Awareness is the seed of wisdom. Without it, we are sleepwalkers in a world designed to keep us unconscious. The second step is discipline. Intelligence does not flourish by accident, it is cultivated. This means making deliberate choices about what you read, watch, and listen to. It means seeking out voices that challenge you instead of those that simply confirm your biases. It means reading books that demand effort rather than skimming endless feeds of shallow content. Discipline is not glamorous, but it is essential if you want to rise above the noise. The third step is dialogue. Human beings grow wiser in community, but only if that community is committed to truth. In our time, conversations often degenerate into conflict. Yet genuine dialogue, listening with openness, questioning with humility, sharing with honesty, has the power to sharpen our minds and expand our horizons. The philosopher Martin Buber spoke of the I-thou relationship, where we encounter the other not as an object to be debated or used, but as a subject to be understood. Imagine how society would change if dialogue returned to this sacred form. At this point, you might be wondering, is it even possible to reverse the decline? Or is society doomed to sink further into stupidity with each passing generation? These are valid questions, and they deserve serious reflection. History shows us that cultures rise and fall, that wisdom is often lost before it is rediscovered. Yet history also shows us that renewal is always possible. The Renaissance, for example, emerged from the so-called Dark Ages, reviving the wisdom of ancient Greece and Rome while ushering in new ways of thinking. Could we be standing on the brink of another intellectual awakening? The answer depends not on the powerful, but on us. It depends on individuals who choose depth over distraction, courage over conformity, wisdom over noise. For the decline of intelligence is not inevitable. It is a choice, made collectively day after day. And just as decline is a choice, so is renewal. Stay with me, because in the next part, we will explore the most important insight of all, the one that ties everything together and reveals not only why society is becoming more stupid every day, but how you can stand apart from it, reclaim your mind, and live with true wisdom in a world of illusions. We have journeyed through the many reasons why society seems to be becoming more stupid every day. The flood of shallow information, the manipulation of attention, the erosion of education, the triumph of entertainment over wisdom, and the subtle ways in which power benefits from a distracted and divided population. But now we arrive at the most important insight of all, the one that has the power to change how you see yourself and your place in this world. The greatest danger is not that society is getting dumber. The greatest danger is that you might accept it as inevitable. The real tragedy is not the noise outside, but the silence inside, the surrender of your own capacity to think, to question, and to rise above the mediocrity that surrounds you. Throughout history, wisdom has never belonged to the majority. It has always been preserved by the few who dared to live differently. Socrates was condemned to death for challenging the assumptions of his society. Galileo was silenced for revealing truths that threatened authority. Martin Luther King Jr. was persecuted for daring to dream of justice in a world built on division. At every stage of history, the masses preferred comfort.